What up? It's Lou Know It. Haven't made a video for a while. Still searching for a direction. Been talking with a friend of mine about doing a collaboratory. Is that the right word? Channel where we would do sort of. Well, I won't give it away, but it has to do with movie reviews because I don't want anyone to steal the idea. So, I figured I'd do a video, and I figured let's do something controversial to try and drum up some views and see what happens. So, I'm going to talk about my feelings about the current political climate and Black Lives Matter and some of that stuff. So, where do I start? Well, I'm liberal. I've always been liberal. I've always considered myself liberal. All my friends are liberal. My friends would say I'm the least liberal of the group. This is a group of friends I've known since like 5th grade. But we're all on the liberal side of things. And so what do I mean by liberal? Well, I support legalization of drugs, LGBTQ, divided by underscore, root of, you get the picture. I support the rights of them, certainly to get married, and I'm not into the whole nuclear family thing. Not religious. Not opposed to high taxes. I do believe healthcare, if we can, should be should be granted as a right to American citizens. So these are some of the things that make me consider myself liberal. I'm pro-choice. I'm okay with, late-term abortions, if I'm honest with you. So these are some of the things that, you would think. I guess a lot of people might think that based on that, I'm 100% behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, I was to a degree. I mean, certainly I agree with the concept and the overall movement, the initial idea. That in general, there's a history of devaluing of black life in this country, and it's a problem, and it should be focused on. Now, there's a lot of stats that I've heard. I've seen videos by Sam Harris, Coleman Hughes, where they talk about the statistics, and do the statistics bear out the sort of media narrative of how many black people are being killed by police in relation to the incidents where they're encountering police, in relation to the incidents where they're committing crimes, and that kind of stuff. And then you get into the history and why are they committing crimes, and there's a very valid point to be made that a lot of these communities, a lot of black communities, have a lot of crime going back to things like redlining, which was a systematic sort of segregation and prevention of black people living in suburbs and nice neighborhoods, and there was things that prevented, even past slavery, which is obviously the worst thing, towards black people in American history. But then after that, the Jim Crow laws, and the lack of ability to vote. I mean, all these things affected, intergenerational wealth. You go back to also the fact that essentially culture was stolen from black Americans in a way that you can't really point to any other examples of this except maybe genocides like the Native Americans, where a culture was stolen from a people. In other words, the black slaves in America had to sort of create their own culture because they were disconnected from their culture in Africa, and they created their culture under a system of oppression. So of course their culture is going to be, sort of anti-white, because it was built. The culture was built under this system. So all these things are points that we need to address, and so that's why I support the Black Lives Matter movement overall, the idea of it. The problem is that a lot of people are using Black Lives Matter banners and the name to do things that I don't agree with. I mean, anything from the people that were walking around with Black Lives Matter flags, kicking people out of restaurants, smacking plates off the table, to people actually committing acts of violence, which in terms of burning things, destroying things. Some of that was outside agitators. Some of that was people that weren't genuinely part of the cause. But, I mean, how do you delineate? I mean, if someone has a Black Lives Matter flag, see, the organization needs to do a better job of saying, hey, these people aren't part of us. The people that are committing violence aren't part of this. But you had lower level organizers saying, oh, this is reparations. And then they sort of correct that. The overall organization disagreed with that. And granted, I'm not, my knowledge is still somewhat limited, but there's a lot of bad things that have been done by people under the Black Lives Matter banner, whether or not they're connected with the organization, and the violence hasn't been condoned. And this is something that I try to talk about with my friends, and I can't, because my friends are all liberal, and when I start talking, I'm this conservative, because I question this. Like, for example, recently in Queens, New York, I live in New York, in Queens, New York, there was protests by certain people in the Jewish community because coronavirus positive test rates had risen in certain areas. So they closed the schools by order of Cuomo, the governor, and they limited gatherings in synagogues, and people were protesting. And there were some acts of violence committed against other members of the Jewish community, people that were trying to report and record the situation. And Cuomo was on the news saying, listen, the police need to arrest these people that are committing acts of violence, and something has to be done. Now, I don't remember hearing stuff like that from Cuomo about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I do remember seeing de Blasio painting a mural of Black Lives Matter on the street without condemning the violence that went along with some of it. So I just think that's wrong. And as a liberal, it has pushed me away from supporting Black Lives Matter. And I think this is important to understand, because I think the Black Lives Matter movement is one of the most popular movements in American history, social movements, and I think they are losing focus and they're losing popularity because they are unwilling to condemn, and the Democrats are unwilling to condemn the negative aspects of it because they fear repercussions and electability from the black population, and it is a problem. And so I am now, as a liberal, leaning away from Black Lives Matter. I still support the ideal. I still support the idea that there is systemic racism that exists in this country. And what I mean by systemic racism is not that the laws necessarily right now are racist against black people. It's that for decades, there has been systems created to benefit whites and to hurt blacks in a way that creates a system in this country of oppression, because it creates neighborhoods with more crime. It creates a snowball effect where the increasing single motherhood, and how does that connect exactly with what the government and the systems have done? Well, I mean, if you create laws that benefit one group, don't benefit another group, oppress another group, you're gonna slowly erode the culture of that group that you're oppressing. And so that is the systemic racism that I'm talking about. These decades of laws and things that, I mean, everybody, including Ben Shapiro and other people, admit that these laws have an effect. Redlining has an effect. Like, all these things still have an effect today. Their argument is, well, the laws today aren't racist. That's not the point. It's a straw man. The point is that there is things that need to be addressed. That's why things like affirmative action, while you can argue they are racist, are justifiable, because you're trying to correct a wrong. So, from that standpoint, I support those certain things, certain programs, but I can no longer really fully, wholeheartedly support Black Lives Matter. Again, I support the sentiment. I support, the idea that we need to value black life. We need to do more to, preserve it. But like a lot of people have said, you also need to focus on what kills black people the most? It's homicides. It's young black males are the only group whose leading cause of death is homicide. There's something that needs to be addressed in that. It's not going to be addressed by rioting or protesting. Forget rioting because that's a sensitive word, but protesting, it's not going to be solved that way. Now, do police need better training? Yes, 100%. Better mental health treatment, better treatment in dealing with people with mental health, all kinds of way more training, way better training. Should they be buying military technology? No, they shouldn't. Should we be defunding them? I don't know. I think that's a bad way of saying it because it sounds like abolishing them, and some people actually want to abolish them. So let's say like restructure the spending, more oversight, body cams everywhere, have a separate organization sort of oversee the body cams, and so on and so forth. But the defund the police it's not a smart marketing to the movement because it sounds like you want to get rid of the police, and nobody reasonable wants to get rid of the police. And there's a problem when people get trained to fear the police, even though they might have a legitimate reason to, because if you go into a situation where the police stop you and your immediate reaction is, oh, you fucking stopped me because you're racist, you're now inflaming the situation. Even if the police were wrong, the best thing really in most situations, there was an interview with Anthony Mackie where he was talking about this. He's a black actor that plays Falcon in the Marvel movies. He was saying, look, what's the point of that? If you have an interaction with police, what can I do for you, officer? Here's my identification, calm, respectful, and then if it goes beyond that, there's nothing you could have done. But when you're trained to fear and combat the police, you're going to create more problems when they interact with you. So there's all these different components that need to be focused on, and I just feel like some of the wrong ones are being focused on. I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement is all over the place. A lot of these subgroups are doing things that I don't agree with. You don't need to be knocking people out of eating dinners. You don't need to be burning things. You don't need to be committing violence. And if you think that that's like reparations or whatever, I disagree. And this is coming from a liberal who's very liberal on certain things. And so I just think it's worth saying, because you see a lot of YouTube channels of conservatives sort of complaining about this, and they say, well, liberals are crazy. And I just want to give my liberal opinion that, no, I don't agree with, all the Black Lives Matter stuff. And I think it's gotten out of hand, and I think, it's become a problem. So where does that leave us? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to move forward. But I think that Black Lives Matter, some of the stuff they're doing is going to play a part in getting Trump reelected. And I just, I can no longer, fully support it. I never really fully supported it, but I supported it more. I have a lot of issues with it now. So one of the things I brought up was, I started saying this earlier, I'm not sure if I'm repeating myself, but there was a condemnation of the violence the Jewish protesters were committing, and there wasn't the same condemnation for Black Lives Matter, and there wasn't the same condemnation from the leadership. Yes, they did. There was some condemnation. It wasn't loud enough. It wasn't consistent enough, and it needs to be done. Every time that there is violence, they need to come out and say, "Hey, this isn't what we want. This isn't us. This is not what we're doing." As long as they don't do that, people on the right can easily say, "Hey, look at what they can lump all those people together and say, look at what Black Lives Matter is doing. They're going around burning stuff, destroying stuff." So it's a problem. I don't think it's the right way to handle things. And who am I to say this? Well, who am I? I'm nobody. This is just my opinion. Does it matter? Not really. But I think it's significant because I'm a liberal voice, and I'm voicing something that you're not hearing a lot of liberals say. And one of the problems with the modern liberals is, if you don't toe the line, if you don't, you got to support everything, trans agenda and everything, trans athletes, which is bullshit, by the way, you should not be having trans athletes, then, you know, if you don't support all these things, all of a sudden you're not a real liberal. You're the enemy, you know? People like, I mean, Joe Rogan is more left than right, but he gets called conservative because of some of his views. It's there's a lot of problems in terms of the left, the far left, ostracizing the moderate left. And there's a fracture in the party. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to go Republican because there's a lot of things that I disagree with about Republican policy. You know, I mean, for one, I associate, I mean, about 30% of America believes that they're in a literal, you know, the Bible is the word of God, which, I mean, to me, you know, with all due respect, is fucking moronic. So those people are mostly Republicans, right? So you know, when they say, oh, look at all these crazy social justice warriors, well, look at all the crazy Bible thumpers on the other side. There's extremes on both ends. And the moderates are kind of reasonable on both ends. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm more on the left than the right. I'm really more of an independent. I have problems with both parties. But as a liberal, somebody who supports a lot of liberal policies, somebody who is willing to support Bernie Sanders, who's very liberal, you know, I have a lot of problems with stuff going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and protest and organization and the sub-organizations and stuff like that. And I thought it was important to get that out there on YouTube. Even though I have small viewership, maybe somehow I'll be able to get this more widely circulated. But this is coming from a liberal, so you can see that, you know, conservatives can see that not all liberals are in line with this. Not all liberals support this, and that there is some sort of dissension amongst our sort of side of things. And if Trump wasn't such a complete asshole, I would be, you know, inclined to vote for him. I mean, you know, you forget about the presidential race is ridiculous because Biden is just a horrible candidate. You know, Hillary was corrupt. Biden's incompetent and corrupt. You know, I think that, you know, Kamala Harris is not a good choice. I would have loved if he would have taken Yang or Gabbard. So, you know, I don't know what to do or think anymore, but I just feel I had to come here because I can't even talk to my friends. I try and talk to my friends and they get so upset. Everyone is so emotional about this stuff. And it's like, look, I understand people, especially black people, that are being emotional because it affects them directly. You know, I mean, I am affected by certain issues directly, and yet, you know, we need to be able to have a conversation without getting emotional about it. It's I mean, this is politics. This is some of the stuff, you know, I talk to people who aren't that affected by it, what's going on, and they still can't discuss it without getting all upset. And it's like, you know, I mean, so where are we going to go? How can we go anywhere if we can't discuss these things? And as a liberal, I need to be able to discuss these things with other liberals because I feel like liberals are pushing other liberals away. And I'm not saying I'm going to be a, you know, conservative or Republican. You know, you got people like Tim Pool who pretends like he's a liberal, but he's full of shit. He's not really a liberal. I mean, every video he makes, like, come on, man. Like, just admit your real ideology, you know? Stop trying to pretend like, you know, you're something you're not. I'm not saying I'm going to go that route, but I'm saying that I think it's important for conservatives to hear from a liberal who has a lot of problems with some of the things that conservatives have and think that no liberals really have an issue with it, because I do. So we will see. You know, where this all turns out, and I don't know. This was pretty unprepared, so I didn't do the greatest job, but I got something out there, and that's, you know, about what I got to say on the matter at the moment. So we'll see. But I would like to see more condemnation of the violence from the Black Lives Matter organization, from the Democratic candidates. You say this is not acceptable. I don't care how justified the reasons are. You cannot destroy businesses. We live in a country with, you know, I mean, listen, I'm not a, you know, law-abiding citizen. I mean, you know, there's certain laws I disagree with, right? Like drug laws and stuff. And so, you know, I'm not always a law-abiding citizen, but, you know, destroying people's property, I mean, that's not acceptable. I don't care how righteous your cause is. I don't care. So there needs to be from the left that sentiment. Hey, this is not okay. We are supportive of the cause, but this stuff is not okay. And I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing it from Biden. I'm not hearing it from Kamala. I'm not hearing it from the big names on the Democratic side. I'm not hearing it from the big names in Black Lives Matter. For the most part, there was some, condemnation of it, but there was also lower leadership that was saying, "Oh, this is reparations," and it keeps happening, and it's not, consistently condemned. So, I think you need to see that before, we reach some sort of better understanding. So. And then, in the long run, the Democrats need to get it together and come forth with a decent candidate, because Biden and Hillary, I thought Hillary was bad, and then they just topped it with Biden. So that's where I'm at. And, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about, my thoughts as a liberal, as a white liberal in New York, critical of a lot of the stuff going on, the Black Lives Matter movement. Peace. We'll know it.